Okay, here's a video for sending wires.
Okay, so to send wire, go back to send payments, hit wire transfer, and then if they're not in your system, you need to add them. Go to add a wire recipient, and now usually, if you just logged in, they will send you the activation code that they did earlier. You have to request an activation code. They send it to you. You enter it in. Once you enter it in, it gets you to this place. So let's just go do one real quick, so that you can see. So recipient name. Let me just do. This has to be.
You're gonna need my information anyway, right? Like to send me wires, or that's how we do the transfers.
Yeah, I already put you in yesterday. Okay. So the recipient name has to be their legal name. Sometimes it's an LLC, sometimes it's a superannuation, whatever. So just make sure that you do that right.
So most people that do the superannuation are through wires, or
yes, okay. It's usually always through wires. Now the address, if it's a domestic, this is what they told me. The address doesn't really matter. So if it's, let's say for example, if you have an investor who has a U.S. bank account and they want you to wire funds for them for whatever reason, you can just use the business address.
Okay.
So, I always do that. It's not a big deal. And the banker told me they don't care. As long as it's a U.S. address.
So it's not like a credit card address?
No, it doesn't have to match anything. And then, okay, so then you just go in and enter. Now, if it's a overseas, then it's a little bit different because you're going to have to put, you're not going to have a state. So you're going to put in the city, and then you're just going to put in the region, which will usually be, like if it's Victoria, which is, I think, for Australia. But it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't really matter.
Okay.
3194 is, and I'll give you their address too, the one that I always use for all the Australian ones, because it really doesn't matter.
Okay.
And they just go in and you click the state, the country, sorry. So you go in and put Australia, because if you don't click the country, Australia, they're not going to let you submit it because they're going to see that the zip code is wrong and that you had no state. And then it'll just ask you, is this in a U.S. territory? You can just hit no. If you hit no, then it'll ask you if it's an individual business. I always just put individual. Don't worry about a phone number. And then you just enter in the routing number if it's a U.S., or if it's overseas, then it'll be the SWIFT account.
The Society for Worldwide Interfinancial Telecommunications.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see here. Okay, so I'm just going to pick an international one that I think I've used in the past. Okay, so then all you need to do, now the bank address, you do need a bank address. If it's the wrong one, once again, it's not that big of a deal for them, and I'll send you
recipient bank info.
Mm-hmm. So you're going to have to put in the address, the city, the province, and regions. You're going to put the account number. And for U.S., all you need is the account number, and they don't even care about the address. International ones, they'll usually ask you for the address, the account number, and very important is called the BSB number. So whenever you're asking Australians to send over their bank account information, make sure you do the SWIFT code and the BSB number.
Okay.
Because if you don't have that BSB number, you're not going to be able to do it. You can always Google it, and sometimes they will provide that online, but not always.
Okay.
So
and you said this address here is more important for this particular bank, right?
Exactly. There? So whenever you're sending overseas, then they'll always ask you for the address.
Okay.
And I mean, if you get the wrong one, it's fine as long as it's an address.
Okay.
So I'll just Google, like if the investor didn't send it, I'll just freaking Google this bank, and whatever address pops up, I'll use it.
Okay.
But it's still very important that I get the right BSB number.
Okay.
And the Australians are usually pretty good about sending you the SWIFT code and their account number, but they always forget that. So just make sure that you ask them for that. And then once you enter in all the data, just hit next, and it'll give you a chance to review everything, and then you just hit submit. And that's it.
Intermediary bank, do you ever do anything with that?
Intermediary bank, I usually just leave it as a no. The only time you have to hit yes is if their bank is very small, if it's like a local branch or something, and they need a bigger bank to accept it and then transfer
gotcha.
it.
Okay.
This is what we had an issue with when we were with Broadway Bank, Broadway Bank was too small, so Wells Fargo was our intermediary bank. But I haven't actually ran into any investors who has a small bank. They all bank with the big companies. So just always hit no on there.
Okay.
And then once you hit next, just review all your information, hit submit, and then you're good. And then you can send the wire. Now once you have a recipient, they stay there forever. Same with the payroll. They stay with there until you delete them. So then you can just hit